how did you walk through that? How do you walk through that with somebody to help them appreciate whether or not the high deductible plan makes more sense?
Sure, that's also a good question. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at it, and there's truth to the fact that it's not good for everybody. So it shouldn't be a sales tactic.
Welcome, listeners. Today we're speaking to Jerame. He's a colleague of ours. He's really smart, very funny, a good musician, and a talented barista. He's been working in the health insurance industry for 16 years. He served in a variety of different roles, including customer service supervisor, implementation and account management, reimbursement supervisor, reimbursement management, reimbursement director of operations, director of service delivery and engagement. That's his current title. And his favorite part about his current job is being able to serve our associates and our clients. We've got Jerame with us.
Yes. Welcome, Jerame.
Thank you.
And I've been waiting all week to say Jerame Spoken podcast today. People who know me know that I love my Pearl Jam, so I had to say that. But
it's okay. You're the first person that's ever said that to me.
Oh, I'm sure.
Nobody ever changed Jolene to Jolene.
That's right. Never.
Best
anyway,
song.
It's awesome to be here.
Not the best song in the Pearl Jam catalog, but that's an entire other episode of our podcast. I love you, Eddie. First of all, thank you for agreeing to do this, because I viewed you since I've started at Nova as a human encyclopedia for all things self-funding, reimbursement. So we're happy that you're on the show and willing to participate. So before this recording, we shared 3 questions with you. What is something you've learned that has been so helpful you tell everyone about? What have you learned because something went so badly that you warn others? And given what you do, what do your friends and family always come to you for advice about? So, Jerame, you picked, given what you do, what do your friends and family always come to you for advice about?
So the interesting piece of all this is there's not one single item that everyone comes to me about, and it doesn't just land with my friends and family either, right? So we have, every once in a while, I'll sport the Nova jacket, which basically makes me a prime target for anyone that knows Nova at all. So I have been cornered at, even when my daughter was in a certain school, I was there, someone saw my jacket and said, "Hey, you look at Nova, right?" I said, "Yeah, no, I do. I have a dental question." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And there we were by a swing set talking about dental. So that's just for starters. Yeah.
There's no bad place to talk about benefits.
There's not. And I become an instant salesperson, like, "Oh, and then if you ever need me, here's my card." And then I have, like, on a first name basis with some of our customers. But so yeah, I get it just about all sides. I get some like realistic questions of things that I do, because I focused, as Sarah had somehow put, like, it sounds like there was like 17 people in all those roles. But I did talk to my brother, who he's 30 something. He's actually like a division manager of multiple banks. And he had messaged me and then gave me a call because he wanted to know what direction he should go with his benefits. So being on both the self-funded medical side, also being really involved in the reimbursement side, so your FSH or HSA stuff, he had asked me, what direction he should go, because his employer is giving him $350 a month towards benefits. And so, and kind of talking through, and you would think, like, I literally took for granted as a bank manager, he would know everything, the inside and out, but he actually, he didn't. And I was kind of impressed he even asked me for his advice, because he never asked me for advice. If anything, we just make fun of each other. But anyway, I said, you're 30 something. As far as I know, you're pretty a healthy guy. He doesn't have any kids, so it's just him and his wife. And we started talking about, his like to invest and take care of himself. He's actually, incredibly fit, and they want to give him this much money each month. So we talked about, why wouldn't you do an HSA?
I hate, it's such a broad question to say what has changed.
Oh, that's actually a really good question. So I walked in to healthcare brand new. I walked into the member service department or customer service department as a supervisor one of the first times that our company actually did that. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea about healthcare. And so one of those situations, every time someone asked me a question, I would have to run to somebody else and get the answer. So I was learning that way. So what I knew of healthcare at that time was really lunchbox. It was very cookie cutter. This is a copay. This is coinsurance. These are the color of our plans, and then we move forward. And it was really, that was it. As in our parent company, as we started moving forward, they started branching out as far as who handled what areas. So I was part of something called the complex account team, which is now better known as the self-funded services, who we are. So it was like in its infancy. So self-funding was like, I don't know, I guess we pay our own bill. I don't know. I don't understand what self-funding is, but whatever, make me a supervisor of that. So as time went on, I learned self-funding, and I also learned the reimbursement side of it as a support to self-funding, just of those sorts of things. It was not, I wasn't in the capacity that I was today. I was in the supporting role. I didn't understand the intricacies or the intimacy of what that was. So as time went on and due to various different circumstances, I was put into a client services / implementation role where I started looking at the nuts and bolts of healthcare, right? It wasn't just I'm looking at a grid and answering a question. I was part of designing the plan and understanding what all those things come about. So I was able to understand self-funding to a degree where I could also take that knowledge of what it's like to have a benefit that your employer pays for, and I started to incorporate that into the reimbursement side. And through a series of different events, I became solely FSA HRA. And at that time, HSA wasn't really popular or a thing yet. But that's where I sort of got my feet wet into that whole tax favor plan piece. So then it just grew from there. And now, the place that we're in, we start talking about direct primary care and level funding, reference-based pricing. Like the world of healthcare has exploded into a lot of different variations. And some of the ideas that are out there are phenomenal. It sounds ridiculous talking about insurance that way, some form of coverage, but it's awesome. Like when you can get to a place where you can sort of choose the direction you want to go, and you can see where it can save you, it can cover you. If you're someone that doesn't frequently go, you go maybe once or twice a year, how that could benefit you, or someone that needs consistent care, whether it's maintenance or whether it's something that's a little bit more intense. Like there's so many different options out there. And a lot of those options, like even direct primary care as being a really super cool option, is you're kind of getting back to the ownership piece of things, right? Your primary doctor is going to take care of all of your stuff. You're going to see them, and they're going to direct you to who they think in network, so to speak, is who you're going to see. And it sort of consolidates costs from a employer group perspective, but it also gives, the doctor and the patient that relationship again. It's not a churn and burn kind of situation where a doctor has 1,900 patients and he sees that person, once every 7 months because everyone else handles it. They actually have this sort of relationship that's there. So, and now there's technology with apps, and you can choose benefits to add. There's all these different things that are super cool that just didn't exist even 16 years ago when I was out there. So I can see where costs rise, but people and organizations are rising to the occasion and doing something better. So it's a phenomenal question, and I just rattled on for like 15 minutes. So.
It was excellent, and you kind of hit it on the nose with, you don't have to settle for a cookie cutter option because there's so many creative solutions out there, but it's just understanding them all. The acronyms in our industry, we always joke, so when you hear FSA, HRA, HSA, what does that mean? And just studying those and understanding how they can apply to your, yourself, your life. So I think that was awesome to hear of all the changes over a span of several years.
So I want to ask a quick question.
Yep.
When you were talking about, how do you decide between, because I had this option when I started at Nova, choosing between a traditional commercial plan that's co-pays straight across the board for everything. So you sort of know this is what I pay out of my paycheck every month for this coverage. And then there's this other kind of like wild option, it feels like, which is the high deductible plan, where the cost to me every month might be lower from like an out of pocket perspective. So what I pay every month might be lower, but then I've got the HSA tied to it because now I'm footing the bill until I reach that deductible. So when you had that conversation, because at first when I had it, I was like, well, the high deductible plan to me feels wild and reckless, because I'm on the hook starting January 1 for everything up to X, and then I move into a copay arrangement. My brain could not make that a reasonable comparison to a like traditional PPO plan where you're just paying every month. I know it's $500 or $800 a month for my, traditional plan versus this wild big figure with a comma and a place I don't like on a high deductible plan with an HSA. So how did you walk? It took 3 years of Nova Associates explaining to me, who were good at math, why the high deductible plan made more sense for me. But how did you walk through that? How do you walk through that with somebody to help them appreciate whether or not the high deductible plan makes more sense?
Sure, that's also a good question. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at it, and there's truth to the fact that it's not good for everybody. So it shouldn't be a sales tactic, and it should be. Employers can take into consideration a lot of things when they set up those plans. One of the advice that I give on some of the employers that are introducing a high deductible HSA qualified plan for the first time is to consider maybe giving the allotment that they normally would give completely upfront on day one to get people used to it. And that way, it kind of covers whatever gap of that deductible that they're willing to put forth. And then the employee can put in the extra money each month or every pay period, depending on how they set it up. That way, there's that sort of that safety net there. However,
so if the out of pocket for a family is $6,000, you would recommend setting it up so that the first time you offer that plan, the plan contributes like half to that or whatever their contribution towards it would be upfront.
Right. Well, and the reason I say that, it doesn't have to be that way, but we are programmed in society to think that emergencies are going to happen tomorrow, and you always have to be prepared, right? So the big scary high deductible plan is basically saying there's a big hole here, and you're about to step in that, and you're just going to have to deal with it because it's going to cause you you're going to go bankrupt, and there's no way until whenever your open enrollment is, that you're going to be able to back out of it. So that fear tactic is right there. Scary. But we're programmed that way because, life does happen and those things do occur. So sometimes when you're looking as an employer, if you're saying, I really want to get people to be able to control some of their own destiny as it relates to healthcare. So high deductible is you are looking at it, especially if you have two options, you're looking at it critically and saying, okay, for me and whoever is covered as a dependent, what are we looking at, each year? Do we typically go to the doctor for routine? Are we going to someone on a maintenance drug? Do I have a medical condition or someone in my family that's a dependent have a medical condition that's going to look at it? Like, are we going to hit our $6,000 family deductible on month 2 because it costs us $3,000 a month? So those sometimes are the things that you have to kind of work through before you step foot into that waiting pool. But the numbers show ultimately that's such a very small percentage of an employee of the workforce that actually end up in that circumstance. However, again, the employer can do some form of that money upfront, quarterly, monthly, if they want to kind of spread it out, or all upfront to kind of get in. You're kind of in the shallow end first. Right. Now, if it does end up being a monthly piece of it, you can, and you probably went through this too, is to say, you kind of came to a point where you said, okay, this is how much we normally spend. This is how much I would actually spend, $500, whatever that is. And you could either take a portion of that and make that as a tax favored contribution and kind of add to that pot. You can schedule things around. So if you do have elective surgeries or things that are not like completely necessary, so to speak, medically, you can schedule that out so you have a couple of months of a buffer there if you want. If you're someone that just goes for routine and you typically don't have anything you have to worry about, even maintenance meds being maybe $5 or $10, whatever they end up being at a cost, you're still in a position where at the end of the year, you could decide that, or at the end of the year, you might have amassed between the contribution from the employer, yourself, you could be in a position to have $3-4 grand already in there. And then that rolls the following year. And all of a sudden you're starting year 2 with $4,000 and your deductible, although it resets, you already got most of that kind of filled up. So it does take a little bit of time and thought. And we've done that even on our own operations team, that we make that choice every year. And I walked it through with several of our associates to say, well, what makes the most sense? One person, is in a situation where they ultimately said, there's no way, we have to go through a lot of stuff this year. I'm going to switch back to the PPO plan, and they're going to take that money that's in the HSA and pay for some of their medical expenses. They can't contribute anymore, but they still have it there from year one. But then on year 3, they went, okay, all that's done. Let's go back. I really enjoyed having that, and I can invest some of that money because I hit that threshold. So there's a lot. It's up to you as an individual, but you have to go through those exercises. And we, at least as an organization, we offer things on YouTube videos. I mean, there's resources that are out there that you can look at to learn more about. Use your resources. You don't have to do it in a vacuum.
So much good stuff. I feel like we need to have a part 2. Maybe down the line, Jerame, we're going to tap you on the shoulder again.
I'll get a couple other titles and then we can start with a few more.
That could happen.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This podcast is brought to you by Nova Healthcare Administrators. Why, oh why did they let us do this? Because at the end of the day, every Nova associate is driven to do what is right. We want what's best for our clients and their members, and we do a great job sharing what we learn with each other. Between our colleagues and business partners, we know a lot of kind, smart, and thoughtful people who we convince to share their tips with you.
And don't forget to leave us a review or give us a like or subscribe. You're welcome to subscribe, but more importantly, share. We'll find the insiders and you share it with the outsiders. You can find our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and pretty much wherever you're finding podcasts.